Good evening and welcome to KBVR News. My name's Nicholas Heydenrych.
And I'm Cam Howry.
Coming up later today in the news, I hear Cam will have some story about Valentine's Day.
Yes, a couple of those later coming up, and but first we have a story about Ronald Reagan and Dole, don't we?
Elizabeth Dole, she's my Valentine. A Connecticut man who was mistakenly freed from prison has pleaded guilty to a shooting and rape he committed while on the loose. The 23-year-old was released from prison after a clerical error showed his sentence as 5 days instead of 5 years on a robbery conviction. Ryan Testa shot one real estate office employee and raped another while free from prison. Police say he also stole and used the victim's credit cards. The judge in the case says Testa will be sentenced to 22 years in prison next month. And don't bother looking for Ronald Reagan's face on Mount Rushmore. An Arizona congressman suggested adding the Gipper to the famous South Dakota monument, but the National Park Service is putting the kibosh on the idea. As far as the agency is concerned, Mount Rushmore is complete as it is. Further, officials say an engineering study finds that carving anything else into the mountain could destabilize the faces already there. Presidents Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Teddy Roosevelt graced the work, which was completed in 1941.
Researchers at the Oregon State University will get a share of a grant worth nearly $18 million to study ways of protecting marine organisms. This is the largest single university grant ever made by the David and Lucille Packard Foundation. Also sharing in the grant will be Stanford University, University of California, Santa Cruz, and University of California, Santa Barbara. A major focus of the consortium's effort will be to study the interactions of sea life along a 1,200-mile stretch of coastal waters from Oregon to Southern California. And Coast Guard officials have confirmed that 2 fuel tanks and 1 diesel tank have ruptured on the Japanese freighters stranded in the surf near Coos Bay. Officials have called in 200 workers to help shovel congealed fuel off the sandy beach. The oil slick has hit shore up to 5 miles north of the site where the new freighter, New Carissa, became grounded on a sandbar. Workers have already sighted the first birds to be covered in black oil. The 600-foot ship run aground last Thursday. Just last night, a 200-foot salvage tug arrived at the scene and may try pulling the ship free as soon as weather permits.
And Elizabeth Dole, who's inching closer to a White House bid, is getting good reviews for a speech she delivered Monday night in New Hampshire. Without mentioning President Clinton by name, Dole said the presidency has been tarnished. She told the Chamber of Commerce event in Manchester that America needs a leader with the integrity to inspire trust. The former American Red Cross president also confirmed Monday night that she has raised money from supporters. Reading her prepared speech word for word, Dole's delivery was often flat, but she received polite applause at least 16 times during the 45-minute speech. Her comments about schools and values, not the veiled references to Clinton, drew the most praise as listeners predicted she would run as a GOP moderate. New Hampshire will hold the first presidential primary of next year's campaign. And another possible AIDS vaccine is being tested on people. This series is the first in Africa, where the disease is devastating whole nations. The U.S. National Institutes of Health say the trial is underway in Uganda, which has seen nearly 500,000 people die from AIDS. The Ugandan study involves a vaccine that uses canarypox virus to carry 3 HIV genes. The NIH says canarypox cannot cause human disease and that the HIV genes themselves aren't infectious. The vaccine has already undergone safety testing in the United States and France. No serious side effects were reported. One question is whether the vaccine will trigger a protective immune response to HIV subtypes found in Africa. The vaccine genes were drawn from HIV strains found in the U.S. and in Europe.
Portland's Blitz Weinhard Brewery will likely close as a result of today's beer merger. The 143-year-old brewery is being sold by its parent company, Straw Brewing of Detroit, to Miller Brewing of Milwaukee. Most of the plant's 220 employees are expected to remain on the job during a transition period of 9 months. Then Miller would take over the Blitz Brewer's production and move its production out of state. Miller spokesmen aren't saying how many jobs might be saved after the transfer. The Blitz Brewery produces Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserve as well as Schlitz, Old Milwaukee, and Colt 45 malt liquor. Blitz Weinhardt has been operating in the region since before Oregon became a state. In other news from around the state health officials say 179 people died of heroin overdoses in Oregon last year, compared to 59 10 years ago. Last year's heroin deaths accounted for 76% of the state's total drug overdoses. Drug counselors and police say the highly addictive drug is cheap, potent, and widely available. Lane County is starting a new education and drug prevention campaign called the Drug-Free Lane County Project. The program is being paid for by a $200,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, matched by $100,000 in local money.
So, Mohamed, I hear we have a new #1 in college basketball polls.
That's right, Patrick. But first, talk about that later, but first I got a really interesting story. Big day in football. The Cleveland Browns picked Jim Payne to be its first player. The Detroit Lions center was the first chosen in the Browns expansion draft. Every NFL team had to make 5 players available for the draft. Once a team lost a player, they could withdraw another from consideration, and if a team lost 2 players, they could withdraw its remaining unprotected players. The Browns made Dallas defensive end Hervin McCormick their second choice. New England tackle Scott Ruberg was third, Cincinnati receiver Damon Gibson was fourth, and San Francisco center Steve Gordon was fifth. The draft was set up to be a TV event with 4,000 Cleveland fans packing the Canton Civic Center for the show. In college hoops news, preseason #1 Duke is back atop of the Associated Press men's basketball poll. The Blue Devils ended Connecticut's 10-week reign by receiving 59 of 71 first-place votes. UConn slipped a notch after losing to Syracuse last week. The Huskies are second ahead of Auburn, Cincinnati, and Michigan State. 6th-ranked Stanford is followed by Maryland, Kentucky, UCLA, and Arizona. And Tennessee is spending its 5th straight week as the #1 women's basketball team. The Lady Vols are followed by Purdue, Louisiana Tech, Connecticut, and Colorado State. And in other NCAA news, ACC Commissioner John Solford isn't standing still after Auburn backed out of a September 2nd football game against Florida State. Solford is urging that the 9 ACC schools to boycott the Tigers in every sport, and sent an angry letter to Auburn Athletic Director David Housel. In the letter, Solford says it's absolutely reprehensible that a university of Auburn's stature should back out of a televised game on such a short notice. And now let's look at some sports scores. In some NHL news, Vancouver beat New Jersey 4-3. Washington beat the Islanders 2-1. NBA news, the Utah Jazz beat Dallas Mavericks 90-79, in which Andre Iguodala scored a season-high 13 points. Atlanta beat Chicago 87-71. And in top 25 men's basketball, Auburn beat Mississippi 95-66, while St. John's beat West Virginia 80-68. And a couple of NBA notes for you tonight. The NBA has handed down its first fines of the season. Houston forward Charles Barkley is $5,000 lighter after swearing toward Los Angeles Lakers fans in the season opener. New Jersey's Kendall Gill and Atlanta's Steve Smith were each fined $2,500 for fighting near the locker rooms following the Hawks' win over the Nets. And lastly, Michael Jordan's retirement and the NBA lockout hasn't hurt the television ratings at all like people expected. NBC's Sunday doubleheader posted a 5.8 rating, a 2% increase over last season's opening telecast. TNT aired 2 games opening night that showed a 65% increase over last season's average. And now let's look at a public service announcement.
Coming up, we'll have some weather, which has been kind of crazy recent.
Yeah, back at the residence halls, we've had lots of people acting crazy with all the snow and sleet, one in particular.
Summer?
Yeah, I was actually very surprised this morning. It started out sunny, ended up with snow. It wasn't supposed to snow. And it looks like we're going to have a little bit more of that snow stuff.
All right.
But it might not last all night. We'll see what happens. So the current conditions right now in Corvallis are 34 degrees. That looks like some freezing weather coming up. Skies are cloudy with the barometer 29.98 and rising. The wind is calm and we have 30% humidity. And we'll look at, up in our satellite picture, as you see, we've seen all the moisture that we're probably going to get for today. It's moving back this way. Coming in from the coast, we have spotty, partly cloudy weather, probably not too bad. Pretty clear coming in for tomorrow. So let's look at some of the nation's highs for tomorrow. Okay, up in our coast on down the line, we're going to have it in about 40s, and then moving down 50s to 60s. In the Midwest, we're going to have 30s up in the Northwest and the 40s throughout the middle, down always as always warm in the south. Can we look at the forecast for this week? Okay, tonight we're going to have snow showers, lows 30 to 35, so be careful on those roads. With southwest winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Wednesday morning we're going to have some more snow showers, so it looks like it's going to be sticking around, and highs near 45 degrees with south winds 5 to 15 miles an hour. Oh, Wednesday night we're going to have rain likely with lows near 35, and there's the light rain coming back on Thursday with highs near 50.
So we're going to get some more of the snow stuff, huh?
Yeah, it looks good. I'm pretty excited. We haven't had snow in Corvallis in a long time, so
It's going to be cool.
it's going to be great.
Well, when we come back after the break, we'll have Subi tell us about what's going on in entertainment news.
And we'll be right back after this. And we're back. Joining us right now is Subi with entertainment.
That's right.
Cam, I hear you're a big fan of Oprah.
That's right, I'm the biggest Oprah fan, and I'm really excited because I guess we have a story coming up about Oprah, don't we?
Yes, we do, and it seems like she's going through a jealousy phase.
Oh.
Cam, I don't
All
think you're the
about-
biggest Oprah fan.
I think Oprah's probably the biggest Oprah fan.
Well, I'll tell you more about it later, but for now, the 41st Annual Grammy Awards on February 24th will feature performances by Lauryn Hill, Vince Gill, and Alanis Morissette, while Brandy, Gloria Estefan, Martina McBride, and Sting were added to the list of presenters. The awards, hosted this year by Rosie O'Donnell, will be telecasted from Los Angeles Shrine Auditorium. Hill will come to the stage with a record of 10 nominations, the most ever for a female recording artist. Brandy and Gill come back by 4 Grammy nods, Morissette by 3, and Estefan and Sting each by 1. Blondie is back, and that apparently makes the British very happy. Led by Deborah Harry, the band's latest single, Maria, off No Exit, their first record in 17 years, went straight on to British charts at number 1. The band also boasts a sold-out European tour. Overjoyed at their revival, the 53-year-old Harry, once a Playboy bunny, said, "I want to recapture my youth, jerk around in front of thousands of people, and make money, of course." Blondie, once picked by Andy Warhol as his favorite pop group, enjoyed huge success at the end of the 70s with a string of 5 number 1 hits and album sales around the world that topped 40 million. Responding to suspicions of Tammy Wynette's 3 daughters, the country singer's daughter says there is no reason to suspect the Wynette died from anything other than a blood clot. Dr. Wallace Marsh of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center said there is no doubt that her death resulted from the effects of blood clots to her lungs. Meanwhile, Davidson County Medical Examiner Bruce Levi has already said late Monday that Wynette's daughters and their lawyer raised several issues in requesting an autopsy and that he wouldn't make a decision in the next day or two. And for our top story, the queen of daytime talk says she's ready to relinquish the crown to the likes of Jerry Springer. Oprah Winfrey tells London's Sunday Times that she is ready to bail out of her long-running show. "I am all talked out," Winfrey said, "but my contract has 2 years left. Then I'm getting out of such shows because I feel they are going to burn themselves out." Winfrey has been a ratings success since launching the Oprah Winfrey Show in September 1986. Despite its 32 daytime Emmys, it recently has been challenged in the ratings by the Jerry Springer Show. And Shakespeare in Love continues to be the little picture that could, churning out the most Oscar nominations Tuesday with 13, including 1 for Best Picture and 1 for Best Actress with Gwyneth Paltrow. Saving Private Ryan, Steven Spielberg's tribute to the courage witnessed in the horror of World War II, also reached double digits, garnering 11 nominations. Along with Shakespeare and Saving Private Ryan, the nominees for Best Picture are Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, and The Thin Red Line. So, guys, are you going to see the Grammy nominations?
Yeah, it looks like a good show this year.
But
Yeah.
only if Blondie gets on.
You know, that was quite a story.
That's right.
Coming up in the news. Oh.
That's right. Things seem to be going very well for the nation's first hand transplant recipient. In fact, Matthew Scott is ready to go home. And when he does, Scott says he'll be looking forward to picking up his 2 young sons with both hands instead of 1. Today, Scott made his first public appearance since having surgery about 2 weeks ago in Louisville, Kentucky. He'll now undergo 3 months of therapy. Scott lost his left hand in a 1986 firecracker accident. So far, his doctors have seen no signs that his body is rejecting the new hand. And the Chinese trying to enter the United States from Canada illegally are getting more daring and more desperate. Early this morning, a border agent saw something crawling along the upper deck of a railroad bridge, 200 feet above the Niagara River. Agents took 6 people into custody after they jumped to the ground on the American side. 2 others got away. The Border Patrol says a recent crackdown on illegal immigration in northeastern New York has shifted the focus to western New York. In January, 4 Chinese women were found wedged underneath a truck at the border near Niagara Falls. 2 had been treated for possible carbon monoxide poisoning.
And a convicted murderer serving time in Oregon may help save his dying sister's life. Gary Hogan's sister lives in Wyoming, and he hasn't seen her for 25 years, but now she needs a partial liver transplant, or else she'll die. Hogan is a compatible donor and says he's willing to donate part of his liver to save her. Prison officials have not yet given him the go-ahead. They say that they still have safety concerns, and they're also waiting to see if Hogan is the only compatible donor. Hogan has been in prison since 1981, and officials say he's been an average inmate who hasn't caused much trouble behind bars. And Portland's Forest Park, already the largest urban park in America, keeps getting bigger. For the second time in less than a month, the park has acquired more land. The latest purchase adds 52 acres to the park and cost $960,000. The new addition includes one of the highest points in the park, with a 360-degree view of the mountains, rivers, and valleys. In January, the city bought 73 acres for $1 million. The 5,000-acre forest park is popular with hikers and mountain bikers.
All that Valentine's Day candy is bad for your teeth, right? Well, maybe not. A dental education group says chocolate isn't as likely to cause cavities as we used to think. The Academy of General Dentistry says chocolate contains tannins, which help prevent cavity-causing bacteria from sticking to the teeth and gums. Still, the dentists note that chocolate is chock full of calories and sugar, and people still need to brush after eating it. Overall, it's estimated Americans will buy more than 36 million heart-shaped boxes of chocolate candy for Valentine's Day. And in related news, a Valentine's Day tip. Pucker up and prevent cavities. The Academy of General Dentistry says kissing stimulates saliva, and saliva washes out the mouth and helps remove cavity-causing food particles. A spokesperson says when the saliva is stimulated, you can produce up to half a teaspoon of the stuff per minute. During the day, you might produce up to 4 cups of saliva. And if there's no one to kiss this Valentine's Day, don't worry. The Academy suggests sugar-free gum. It's not too romantic, but it produces 3 times the regular amount of saliva.
And a man is in stable condition after being sheriff's deputy last night in Smith Rock State Park. Relatives say David Hughes left home last night to commit suicide. Deputies found him in the parking lot of the Central Oregon Park. After negotiating with him for about a half hour in the middle of a snowstorm, the man allegedly pointed a rifle at the deputies. One of the deputies then fired a shot that hit Hughes in the midsection of his body. And a Philomath man is dead after his car struck a power pole last night. Jason Meyer was driving north of Albany when his car left the roadway into a sharp turn, rolled through a ditch, and slammed into a power pole. There was no evidence of ice or other road hazards. And coming up, we'll have some public service announcements and some events, too.
That's right. So let's take a look at what's going on in the Corvallis area. On February 11th, there'll be a men's basketball game versus Washington. Take place in Gill Coliseum, 7:07 p.m. For more information, dial 737-4455.
And on February 12th, there'll be a gymnastics meet, a women versus California, again at Gill Coliseum, 7:05 p.m. For more information, call 737-4455. Cost is $3.
On February 19th, another basketball game. This time it's women versus Arizona. Gill Coliseum at 7:05 p.m. For more information, call 737-4455.
And on February 20th, there'll be a concert of Indian classical music at the Milam Auditorium at 4 o'clock. For more information, call 758-4381. Cost is nothing.
Well, those Valentine stories were certainly good for Valentine's Day coming up this Sunday. Means a lot of kissing and chocolates, evidently.
I know I'm keeping track of my saliva count.
That's right.
Well, good night, everyone.